Our next in-person mastermind is coming up this fall, and we're heading to Vegas. We're kicking off this mastermind with an in-person tour at Zappos downtown Las Vegas campus, where you'll learn their strategies behind company culture, core values, employee engagement, and customer service. Looking outside the legal industry for business concepts and strategies allows you to gain fresh perspectives and innovative solutions that can be applied to improve and differentiate your firm's operations. Following the tour are the mastermind hot seats. Every attendee has the opportunity to dive deep into their business obstacles with their mastermind group and coach. We believe that nothing beats working on your firm in person, so join us in Las Vegas on November 7th and 8th. This is your chance to break through barriers, spark new ideas, and accelerate your law firm's success. Limited spots are available. Visit maxlawevents.com for full event details and to grab your ticket today.
Run your law firm the right way. This is the Maximum Lawyer Podcast. Your hosts, Jim Hacking and Tyson Mutrux. Let's partner up and maximize your firm. Welcome to the show.
Welcome back to the Maximum Lawyer Podcast. I'm Jim Hacking.
And I'm Tyson Mutrux. What's up, Jimbo?
Tyson, it's been a strange week. You know, in immigration land, if you apply for citizenship and you've been involved in prostitution, you can't become a U.S. citizen, or it might be hard. I've had two different people this week. I haven't talked about prostitution with a naturalization client in a really long time. I had a porn star who was worried that porn was prostitution. And then I had a lady who had a profile on a well-known escort service that she was on for 7 months, but she claimed to never have had sex for money. So it's been an interesting week.
So we all want to know now, is porn prostitution? Is that considered?
I think I turn it over to you. I'm asking the general public. I discussed it on my show yesterday. Most people thought not. And I think there's probably a First Amendment problem there somewhere in there. But, you know, the porn guy ended up hiring a different lawyer, so I didn't have to do much research on it.
Well, I think if porn and prostitution were the same thing, this is the first time we've ever discussed anything like this on the show, then I think they would be treated the same, but they're not treated the same legally, so I can't imagine that they are the same. Wow, what an interesting thing. Let's introduce today's guest, Brian Manning.
He didn't see that coming, did he, Brian?
Proud to be here for a first. That's fun.
Brian, what's your opinion on this very hot topic?
Yeah, what you just said, Tyson, it's like, you know, it's not treated as prostitution for general purposes, I don't think. So, yeah, this should be good.
This guy said he saw it on Reddit before his interview. So when the officer kept asking him if he was involved in prostitution, he kept saying, no comment, no comment, no comment. So his case got denied because you can't say no comment at your naturalization interview. He thought that was going to save the day.
Oh, my gosh, that's crazy. Well, let's make sure I give Brian the proper introduction. Brian Manning is a political asylum lawyer. He does immigration like Jimbo does. He started his law firm, Political Asylum Lawyers, in January 2020 after working for 11 years for the government's two main agencies for asylum and refugee affairs. Brian served for over 2 years at the Houston Asylum Office, including as an asylum officer and a congressional liaison, which we'll get to more of the stuff in a moment. I think that gives you a pretty good ideas to Brian's background. But Brian, welcome to the show.
Thanks, guys. Really glad to be here. Long-time fan. I was listening to you guys before I even started my practice. Back when I was working for the government, I reached out to Jim several years ago. So I think I've listened to probably every episode. So glad to be here.
Brian and I spoke more before he opened his firm than anyone I've ever spoken to. I remember specific conversations when Brian was thinking about making the leap. But Brian, you've been on the show before, right?
Yeah, it was I think my first month having my firm open, probably in February of 2020, right before COVID.
Awesome. Great. So that'll be a nice little segue then into what we're going to talk about today, which is this awesome 6-week trip that you took outside the United States with your boys and your spouse and were able to run your firm. I want to get to all that, but talk to us. For me, just for my own pleasure, if you remember, I was teasing you about this the other day. What were your goals back then when you first started? And specifically, I'm talking about you sort of had what I thought was like a cap on your goals, and then talk to us about how you've sort of blown through that.
Yeah, Jim, when you were my official business coach for a while there, it was like I was thinking, I want things to be simple. Like I just envision myself having maybe one associate, a couple paralegals, a support person, and like that's it. I don't want to like try to grow bigger than that because it sounds hard. The people element sounds like a hassle and stressful. So I was like, I can probably make decent money, but just keep it kind of small, but have some flexibility and just be good with that. But like what happened was over time, I started realizing like, wait a second, those stressors that I was worried about, yeah, they're true. Like it's like dealing with people in like your firm is hard, but it's not really any harder than other kinds of stressors that come as you grow your business. And so I was like, listen, if I'm going to be stressed either way, I'm always going to be thinking about the business almost 24/7, right? It never goes away. If I'm going to have that in my life, it's like, why not take advantage of the upside that comes with growth? And yeah, you have to deal with different problems, but there's a saying, different level, different devil, such that, you're always stressed, but the problems are changing. But at least on the other side, you can really take advantage of some of the benefits of growth if you're willing to scale your firm. And for me, it's like, I was like, wait a second, you're telling me that I can make more money and actually do less of the stuff that I don't like and have more flexibility of both like sort of time and geography if I'm willing to leverage, my time by hiring people and growing. I became convinced that, that you could do that just by seeing people who've done it and learning from people like you guys. And so I was like, why not try to grow? And so I've been pretty purposeful then, the last few years about trying to do that. And yeah, I still have a lot of, stress and problems, but they're just different kinds. And I've got more upside than I thought that I could have when I launched the firm, almost 5 years ago.
So it's interesting. I had coffee with Chris Regabi this morning. He's a guild member, and we were talking about his 2-week vacation that he just took. He went to Istanbul, and he went to Greece, and he was talking about how. And we had talked beforehand with him about like what to do prep wise, and it's interesting because we're going to be talking to you about your 6-week vacation that you took. But I know he was very apprehensive about the trip and how things were going to go. And it was interesting because his second week he had zero internet, so he was not able to like communicate with the office. He had a brand new assistant that was starting with him. So they had just migrated to a new system. So a lot of things happening all at one time. And so it was pretty, he said the first week was pretty laid back. The second week he was really stressed because he didn't have any internet. But when it comes to like getting ready for this six-week trip that you went on, and I'd love to hear some of the details about that as well later on.
Yeah. Yeah, it was cool. So I'll say that for the first 10 days, I was on what I call emergency only access, which is for my team, don't at me, in our Google chat, don't call me, don't text me, don't at me unless it's an emergency. And so what does that mean? Well, you have to define what an emergency means. So I just worked up a document. I just sat down and tried to think through what are the things that I really want to know about if something happens such that, I consider it an emergency, such that I'm going to check my phone once at night every day or maybe twice a day to see if I've got an emergency access. I set up a special channel, kind of like a Slack channel. We use Google Chat. They call them Spaces. That's emergencies. I told them to chat me there and to text my phone. And I would check that a couple times a day for emergencies during my emergency only access time. But the key then is defining what an emergency is, right? So it's just sitting down and thinking through what are the things that if they break or come up, I really need to know about. Examples are if an employee quits, if there's something happens that suggests we might get sued by someone, if we miss a deadline, just big things. And I made a list. And I tried to give some examples of, sort of gray area things of I would consider this an emergency. This thing I would not, to just sort of give examples. And then, I did this a couple times on shorter trips. And when I came back, I would sort of do a debrief with my leadership team of okay, you did contact me for this thing. You consider this to be an emergency. I agree. Good. And so we'll add that to the briefing sheet or to the definition sheet of this is an emergency or this thing was not, this would not be. And so you sort of iterate and, keep continuing to perfect it over time to where you've really got that sort of dialed in to where there are expectations back at the office around what is an emergency. So the first 10 days of my trip of 6 weeks, I was on that, and I got maybe one emergency chat that time. And it wasn't anything that took me more than 20 minutes to deal with. So that was great. And then after that, for the rest of the 6 weeks, I worked 2 hours a day, maybe, just to sort of keep things moving. But yeah, the keys I think for me are like having that emergency access only sort of definitions in place. But I mean, you can't do it. I don't think you can't do it while being on emergency access only or like very, very limited work unless you have a good staff, right? I mean, you have to have people in place and keeping the business running. And so I was thoughtful about that over the last couple of years and trying to get to this place where like I want to be able to go on vacation and trust that things are going to work well while I'm gone. And then I would have my staff, also my leadership team, like send me kind of briefing notes each day about like a couple of key points that I should know about or any key decisions that needed to be made. And I would just sort of work through that, spending an hour a day on sort of communications like that. But then I would do like make some, TikTok videos for an hour a day. So stuff like that. But yeah, it takes some planning. It was a little bit daunting for my team. My leadership team was like, oh, I don't know, Brian. They were a little bit nervous about it, as was I. But like it works. You can make it work, and it's just a matter of like deciding I want to do this, and I'm going to try to lay some groundwork by setting expectations and talking through, when you should contact me and who's going to be doing what in my absence. So with planning, you can keep sort of improving and having it be hopefully a better experience each time you try it.
Yeah, so I think I like those are great ground rules. I think that's fantastic. What was your mindset leading up to it? I know you said you were a little stressed about it, but like, did you feel ready? Did you feel like you were going, like everything was going to be okay, or like were you pretty apprehensive about it? I'm just curious what.
Yeah, I was nervous. Like I'd gone for spring break this year for like maybe 8 nights or something on this emergency only access. So I tried that before, but like the whole like 6 weeks, and I was in Kenya, Qatar, and Greece, and I didn't have good internet access for some of those for some stints, some times during that. So I was pretty nervous about it, and it made for a pretty stressful month leading up to it to try to be like, oh, I got to get as much in place as I can, get some key work done, and just get everyone prepared in terms of knowing who's doing what while I'm gone. So it does lead to some stress building up to it.
Brian, where did you guys go, and how did you handle the time zone difference?
Started in Kenya and did, the safari thing we were there for like 10 nights. And then Qatar, like basically flying from Nairobi, we wanted to go to Greece, and like it was either a connection through Doha, Qatar, or through Egypt. And my wife and I had been to Egypt before. We'd never been to Qatar. So like, let's go through there. Why not actually go there since we've never been there? So we stayed like 5 or 6 nights there on the way. So Qatar and then Greece. And Greece, we went to a few different places. We were in Greece for like a month. Time difference. I mean, I didn't take any special measures for that. It's like depending on where you are in the world, right? Like I was east, so I was like ahead of U.S. Central Time that I'm normally operating on. As where the summer before I'd gone to like Tahiti and was like the opposite way. So it kind of either depending on where you are. It does make it sort of stressful to where like you wake up to a bunch of messages that you have to like sort of sort through and some stressors that hit you very early in the morning, or you wake up and your morning is chill. But then like late at night when you're like trying to go to bed, if you're checking your phone at 8, 9, 10, 11 o'clock, it's like everyone's in full swing back at the office. So that can be a little bit tricky. But like, I mean, I just told my staff, like, don't expect to hear from me except for, probably between these set hours. And then I would try to communicate during those few hours of the day, apart from sort of really important stuff. I would just fit that in whenever. But, it's a sacrifice that it's okay. Even though I might be spending 40 minutes going back and forth on something at 9:30 p.m. in Greece, like not ideal, but like I got to spend a month in Greece. So it's like, it's okay.
All right. So tell us about favorite parts of the trip. Cause I want to hear about the actual trip. We can get back to some of the business stuff in a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, Kenya's great. Super cool. My kids really like that whole safari thing a lot. Qatar was a really fun surprise. Like I've never been to like Dubai, but I picture that it's pretty much very similar to Dubai in that like it's like luxe. Like everything in Doha was just like super nice and new and like luxurious, which was interesting. So that was a really fun surprise. And then in Greece for part of that time, for about 2 of the 4 weeks we were there, my wife and I, all 4 of the parents met us there. So we were with them, which was fun, good trip with the kids and stuff, but a lot of hand holding, the parents a little older and haven't traveled so much. And so it's a lot of hand holding, but it was good family time together. So yeah, it's great. Greece is my favorite country. I lived in Bulgaria for a couple of years, which borders Greece, and like we could drive there to Greece from Bulgaria, like 4 hours, and be at like a good beach. So we kind of fell in love with it. And it's my favorite country. Paris is my favorite city, but Greece is my favorite country.
Brian, talk to us about whether anyone in the office sort of stepped up or has stepped up over time to make you feel comfortable being gone or make you happy when you got back.
Yeah, that's a big part of it. I got pretty lucky with my first 2 hires. They've been with me. The first one I hired about 1.5 years into my law firm, which is way too slow. In retrospect, that's a huge mistake. I should have hired much earlier. And then the other one just a few months after her. And so those 2 are 2 of.
Are you tired of the marketing guessing game? Does your website feel more like a digital billboard than a client magnet? If you're nodding along, you're not alone. And it's time to stop the uncertainty and start getting real results. Let's talk about your marketing spend. Are you just shelling out money every month and crossing your fingers? Do you ever wonder what impact your marketing is really having on your revenue? Well, it's time to take the guesswork out of the equation with Rise Up Media. We've been working with them for over a year, and the feedback from our fellow members has been fantastic. Rise Up Media is here to take your marketing to the next level. They'll even perform a full audit of your online presence, giving you the good, the bad, and even let you in on what your competition is up to that you're missing out on. And the best part, there's no obligation, no catch, no pressure. If you decide to work with them, their contracts are month to month. That's right. No long-term commitments tying you down. So what are you waiting for? To learn more about how Rise Up Media can transform your firms, visit riseupmedia.com/maxlaw, and Rise is spelled with a Z. riseupmedia.com/maxlaw.
My leadership team people, and they're both excellent. And so one of them is my managing attorney, and the other is kind of like a COO type, just like basically in charge of all non-legal stuff. And so having those 2 that are just like super competent and really bought into like the firm and the mission and stuff, that makes a huge difference. Like they really care about like trying to build a good law firm, a good company. And so when you've got people like that, that that you can count on to keep things running well, and who have just demonstrated like good judgment, that if something comes up, like, and you're not able to get to it because you're, asleep in the middle of the night, wherever, it's like you having that confidence that you've got responsible people with good judgment in place is really good. So yeah, part of it for me to have peace of mind is exactly that, Jim. It's having some leadership folks back in the office that I like truly trust and who are just very good and competent at what they do.
Did anything go better than expected or worse than expected?
Case signups went better than expected. Last summer when I was gone as well for like almost a month, 2 years or a year and a half ago, it was the same thing. It was like the case signups were higher. However, while I was gone, but that's kind of a product of our lag time of our sales cycle being like 2.5 weeks or so from the consultation to when people sign, like sort of the median, such that like I was, busting my ass the month before I left. I was like, I got to do a ton of consultations, or we have to do a ton of consultations since I'm going to be gone for a month, such that a lot of those came in while I was on vacation. So that's nice. When you're on vacation, like, oh yeah, case signups are good. Last year, like not this past summer, but the one before, there was a big drop off that month that I came back because I had been the one doing the consultations. And so when I was on vacation, they just weren't getting done. Now that's a huge difference to this year, when this most recent summer, where I'm not the person who does the consultations. I do a few, but I don't do many. So if you can keep that function moving while you're gone, if it's not dependent upon you, it frees you up massively to be on vacation or at least to like work irregular hours and not have to worry about sitting in front of a computer with like good lighting and good audio at a certain time to do, video conference consultations, that sort of thing. So getting that staff, like the consultations piece, moving that almost entirely off of my plate was a huge victory in terms of being able to do this, to be gone for quite a while with less stress this time around.
Brian, I think a lot of law firm owners set themselves up for vacation and think that they're going to leave everything to the team, but then they don't really do it, right? They sort of check back in, they dabble, they stick their nose back in. And this is true just in regular delegations. So how have you been able to sort of maintain those boundaries, and how did you make sure that, I guess building it in ahead of time probably helped with that?
Yeah, and it does. But then, mindset of just like, what kind of law firm, thinking about what kind of law firm do I want to have? Like thinking in a year from now, 2 years, 5 years from now, like, do I want to be able to be the person who can really take like 30 days off with like no contact, emergency only access? Like, yeah, I want that. And to work up to that, it's like, I got to sort of start and train myself of like being disciplined for like, okay, let's go 10 days, emergency only access. And like, Brian, be disciplined, be strong. Don't check your phone except for during those 2 times a day where you're going to check only for emergencies. You're not going to go into the other chats or emails. So, it's just mindset of like thinking, where do I want to get to in terms of what the law firm is going to look like and what it's going to mean for me and my freedom of time and flexibility of time and geography. And then sort of being like, okay, baby steps to get there. Let's build up with more days and more resolve to not check back in. But yeah, it's tempting. And of course, I still did it sometimes.
Were you able to get to the point where you kind of had like a clear mind where you like, cause we get so stuck in the day to day sometimes that it was just like, we're just thinking about that. I mean, were you able to step away enough from the business where you felt like you got to relax and you kind of cleared your mind a little bit?
Yeah. I've found that for me, it takes maybe 6 or 7 or 8 nights of like not working to really be like, to get into that different headspace, where you feel like you're not obsessing about the business 24/7. So yeah, I did, especially when I had that emergency only access in Kenya. I had enough time there to get to where I really felt like, okay, I'm hardly thinking about it at all, which is nice. And we all need that, but it's hard to get. And, maybe for some people, it's like they just a long weekend away is enough to like really recharge and get in that different headspace that is just really sort of cathartic and healthy. But for me, it takes longer. It takes like, I don't know, 6 or 8 nights or something.
I think that's a really good point, and I've said this before, is there's just such a huge difference with basically 0% responsibility or 0% work versus 1% responsibility or 1% work. When you leave a little gray area there's just so much opportunity for mischief, either for people to give you too much stuff that you don't want or for you to take in too much stuff that you don't want.
Yeah, totally. If you can like go to like less than 1%, it's to me, I agree. It feels like a different sort of headspace to be in that's much healthier and just better for you.
How was it when you came back?
Good. Yeah. Because there was no major fires or anything. And like I said, case signups were good. So I came back feeling, pretty good. And I didn't have a huge drop off this year because, I wasn't the one doing consultations. So they kept going in my absence. So it was good. I worry a little bit about the stress that it puts on the team, so like coming back, I'm thinking like, are they holding it against me? Are they sort of, especially my leadership team, it's like, are they thinking it's not fair that Brian gets to go take off this much time when, no one else can? So I feel a little bit of discomfort around that, but I'm trying to tell myself that like, that's a perk. That's an owner perk that, is a fair exchange for like the risk and hassle and stress that you take on as a business owner. So yeah, I had a little bit of like returning guilt over the difficult position that I put people in, but it is what it is.
Did you miss work at all?
It's one of those things where it's like, kind of like going back to school after the summer break, where it's like, yeah, you're glad to be back for like at least a week or so to see everyone and just like feel like you're, getting back in that routine sounds kind of nice. It feels kind of good. But then after a few days, it kind of wears off, So that's kind of how I was. Like, no, I didn't miss it while I was away, really. I wasn't like, I wish I was working. And then when I got back, I was excited to be back. But then it was like, a few days in, just like school, it's like, it feels like you're already, pretty quickly back in the grind. But I'll say, getting a really good break, like we were talking about earlier, of more than just like a few days where you really get to that different headspace, I feel like you do get a little bit of a boost, still get a boost from that lasts for, some weeks or a month or two where you feel like, I know I just came off of a long vacation. Like like that, I should be rested. So I feel like I am rested. So I feel like you gain something from that, or at least, a few weeks when you get back from a good trip like that.
I think this whole episode has been a answer to the question I'm about to ask you, but I'm going to ask you it anyway. What do you say to the law firm owners who think, oh, I could never do this. I could never make it 6 weeks without my firm. My firm would grind to a halt, or, signups would go way down and we wouldn't have any money left when I got back.
I think it's really about deciding like what you want. Like if you want that, it's cool. If you don't have any interest in this stuff that we're talking about today, but if like you do want to be able to check out of your law firm for several weeks at a time, it's really about deciding that you want that. First of all, getting clear on, yes, I want that. And if you do, then it's working backward to like, okay, how do I achieve that? And I think that as you think through that, mindset is really important. Understanding that, like, as with all sort of change or anything that's a little bit unknown, it's going to feel a little bit scary and it's going to feel a little bit hard to be like, oh, but things will not run as well without me, and that'll be bad, and that feels scary. It's like recognizing that you have this sort of fear of something that is a little bit unknown and new to you, and recognizing that that's perfectly normal, but that if you just sort of push through that and get on the other side of that hump, it's probably going to work out, and you're probably going to be very, very glad that you did. So it's like, if you want to do it, you got to just resolve that, like, I'm going to at least start, sure, small if you want, but like be very intentional and purposeful about putting some things in place in terms of people that can keep things moving while you're gone, and like actual plans, like the policy of like, when do you contact me for emergencies in place, and mapping out ahead of time, like who is doing what. For us, like none of this, I'm not super organized. The firm is 4.5, almost 5 years old, and we're still working to get organized and professionalized. Like that's been my real focus this last year, is like trying to have like a real business instead of just a law firm. And it took me, a couple years, 3 years probably, to get to the point where we even had like actual workflows for our sort of core case types of like taskings of who does, exactly what step and by when. And I think it would be really hard to go on like to check out for quite a while without having those kinds of systems in place, policies, procedures, and systems. They say systems run a business and people run systems. And like, you got to have the people, you got to have the systems, and you got to have the people that can still be there running the systems and making sure the policies and procedures are executed against while you're gone. So it does take some, sort of institutional framework work to put those things in place. But like, even someone with, one staff member, it's like you can still do it and just start small for, and just be gone for 4 days with emergency only access and just build up.
Brian, I think that's you gave incredible advice. I think at the very beginning, you also gave like a lot of great tips on how to really set yourself up for success whenever you take any vacation, but especially a longer one. We are going to start to wrap things up, though. If people want to reach out to you, how do they get in touch with you, Brian?
Thanks. So my email is great. Brian, is my first name, Brian, and then it's kind of long, politicalassylumlawyers.com. Brian at politicalassylumlawyers.com.
Love it. All right. We are going to wrap things up. If you could, while we're doing this, we would love it if you could give us a 5-star review wherever you get your podcast. It really does help us spread the love to lawyers all over the world that want to listen to getting better with their law firms. And we are going to get to our tips and hacks in the week in a moment. Before I do that, though, if you want to join us in the big Facebook group, just go to Facebook and search Maximum Lawyer. If you want to join the guild, go to maxlawguild.com, and you can join us there. You'll be able to see us in Vegas. If you want to go to Vegas, I believe there might be a couple tickets left. I'm not 100% sure, but go to maxlawguild.com. You should be able to find information about that as well. Jimmy, what's your hack of the week?
We celebrated my assistant's 3rd anniversary with us this week. She's been with me for now 3 years, and she really keeps me on track. I'm a low follow-through, and she's an 8 follow-through on the Colby. So having someone who complements your strengths, who brings their own strengths to the table that sort of helps with your blind spots has been invaluable. She got so much done this week that it would have sat on my plate or my desk for weeks, and there were even things that I needed to do that she got me to do much faster and much more completely than I would have if I were sort of left to my own devices. So find someone who complements your strengths.
It is always really fascinating to me whenever like a person clicks into place like a Lego, like just right, and you're like, everything feels so much better, and like everything gets done, and you're like, wow, that's perfect. So I just love that feeling. That's cool. Great for you, Jimbo. All right, Brian, you've done this before. You were on episode 203. So anybody wants to find that, No Upper Limit was that one. It's a really good episode, but you know the routine. What tip or hack do you have for us?
Thank you. And before I say that, let me just express my appreciation for Maximum Lawyer, for both of you guys, Jim and Tyson, and for the Guild as well. Those things have all been hugely helpful to me in my law firm. So thank you for all the work that you guys do, and for everyone in the community for all the support. So
Thanks, Brian.
really benefited from it. Have a non-attorney salesperson do your consultations. This has been a game changer for me. I know this has come up in discussions and podcasts and stuff from time to time, but I decided to go all in and hire real salespeople, like actual salespeople that have like done sales for several years. Not just like, oh, I worked at a call center or whatever, like actual sales. It's just a completely different mindset than you get with an attorney. An attorney just doesn't have the sort of the mindset to like go out and make sales. So I think lawyers they tend to think like, oh, it's law, so it has to be a lawyer doing this. There's no rule against selling legal services. As a non-lawyer, you can't give legal advice, but you can sell legal services. So like I don't talk to most people that sign up with our firm. Most clients, they come just through talking to a non-attorney salesperson. And like the one that I've got two coming on right now, and then I've got one that's been with me for like 4 months, and she's like awesome. She's like way better than the guy that I had doing him, who's a lawyer, and better than me. So that's my tip.
I think what we have to do is have you back on to do that topic by itself, because I think people would really like to hear that part of it. Because I know that we have non-attorney people but they're not sales. They don't have experience in sales. Some of them have, actually, most of them have experience in marketing, but not necessarily sales. So I would like to hear more about that. I know that Jim doesn't hire necessarily salespeople either, but I think it's something that I have definitely tinkered with. I've got a really good friend who's a salesperson. I've just been a little bit afraid of hiring a really good friend to work for the firm, especially a role that I've never hired for before. So, but I would love to test it out. I've got a lot of ideas about it. So, and I'd love to ask you about it. We're going to have you back on to talk about that.
That'd be great.
My tip of the week, I don't know if it's as cool as yours, but I got the new iPhone 16 Pro Max, and there's a new feature on the camera that you can actually pause your video. I don't know if I'm sure you all probably haven't been in the middle of a video and something happens where you would like to pause it, but you can't. You got to like stop the video and then record a separate video and then piece them together. You can actually pause the video and then start recording again when you're ready again, which I think is a really cool feature.
That is.
Yeah. So for it's not a part of, I have the 14. I have them both. I've looked side by side. It wasn't an operating system update. It's just on the new phone. There's a lot of other cool features too that are on the new one, but it's pretty interesting. So you all should check it out. All right, Brian, thanks so much for coming on. Appreciate it. Love sharing. A lot of great advice you gave. I can't wait to talk to you about the next topic too, but really cool. Thanks for coming on. Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys. Pleasure. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Brian. Bye, guys.
Thanks for listening to the Maximum Lawyer Podcast. To stay in contact with your hosts and to access more content, go to MaximumLawyer.com. Have a great week and catch you next time.
Hey, before you go, stick with me for just a minute because I have a discount that is exclusive to Maximum Lawyer Podcast listeners only, and I want to make sure you know about it. As you all know, it is absolutely crucial to stay on top of calls with clients, with court staff, with judges. I even had a client the other day say that the provider was calling him saying that they've been trying to get a hold of us and they had left us a couple voicemails. Well, that's impossible at our firm because we don't have voicemails. It's extremely important to us that a live person answer the phone. And so we got rid of our voicemails a long time ago. That's where Lex Reception comes in. They are a 24/7 virtual receptionist service that specializes in legal clients. That's you, attorneys, law firm owners. They answer your calls, they screen callers, they schedule appointments, and get this, they can even handle new client intakes. On top of that, you can customize the service to fit your firm's needs. Because let's face it, estate planning is different from personal injury. Personal injury is different from criminal defense. We all have different types of practice areas, so you can customize these scripts that fit your firm, and you can even set the hours that you want them to answer the phone. So for Maximum Lawyer listeners only that are new to Lex, you'll receive $250 off your first month. So, as I always talk about, the best part about an idea is taking action. All you have to do is quote Maximum Lawyer when you reach out to Lex. Go to lexreception.com. When you're talking to them, say Maximum Lawyer to get your $250 discount.